Today marks the last community hit list of the year, bringing some much needed and highly requested quality of life changes. We also got the ability to change the particles of the Master 120 capes, and many more. But before we get into that, a couple of quick announcements. Jagex has put out some Ultimate Christmas currency packs and key bundles for this season. So if you are interested, here are the pricing and some of the things you can get for them, like Umbral Chest, Rune Coins, your standard XP things, keys, and a new cosmetic, the Holly Knight Sword and Armor. There are 3 separate packs, as you can see here, and are a one-time purchase for each offer. They will be available today until January 3rd, and you can find them in Treasure Hunter Shop on RuneScape.com. And just to note, next Christmas, this particular armor set and weapon overrides will be added to the Premier Token store. So if you're so inclined, you can wait for that if you just want the cosmetic. That said, we're now going to shift on over to the community hit list and see what they've done to close out the year. Starting off, the Excalibur, Enhanced Excalibur, and Augmented Enhanced Excalibur now have consistent default actions activate when equipped and in the backpack. This allows Excalibur's healing effect to be activated with ease. You can now use the configure option to choose whether to instead wield or remove as the default option. After dragging Excalibur to the backpack or the action bar, you can choose which default option the action bar uses. And you have a configure option that lets you choose what you'd like to shout when Excalibur's activated. Silence is the default option. You can now hold Shift key and click on items in your backpack to drop them, if they support dropping, of course. They doubled the output of Dying Arrow components, your Sharp Shell Shards, Tempered Fungal Shafts, and Propellants from the 3 accidental fleshing and fire-making activities south of the Anachronia Dinosaur Farm, and entirely reworked the Experiment activity to support a greater range of low to high intensity gameplay. Whenever possible, bank chests, booths, and bankers now have a load last preset option. This reloads your most recent bank preset without needing to open, populate, and close your bank interface. The Dare to Die song that plays at War's Retreat now fades in more gently and plays at a lower volume so that its drum track is gentler on the ears when passing through the PVM hub. A looping ambient sound of crystal chimes has been removed from the Tower of Voices and max guild in Prifddinas to better suit extensive bank stand. A repetitive moan in the zombie walk idle animation, audible to all nearby players, has been removed, as well as a repetitive meow in the idle animation of some cats and kittens. By player request, they reverted the sound played when doing clue scans to its pre-June version. The individual charges of Revenant drop enhancers can now be stacked in your currency pouch, freeing up bank space. When loading a bank preset, including items that can be filled with essence, their current contents are now emptied into the bank before refilling them in case they contain a different type. Rebalanced and updated the rare and super rare loot tables to remove some of the less valuable items, Runite Stone Spirits, Molten Glass, and Raw Lobsters, and increase variance of items dropping in multiples. Players standing on charging pads during the Zamorak boss battle when the Infernus Witch dies no longer need to step off and on again to charge the pad. Clarified the start point description of the Toxket Dill quest. Multiple items can now be added to the keepsake box. You can see on screen here are the list of various different items. If you are interested, you could pause quickly and take a look at each individual one. And lastly, the list of overhead emotes can now be filtered to only show the emotes you've unlocked. And that is your final hit list for this year. If you have enjoyed this video so far, please hit that like button. If you are not subscribed yet and you'd like to stay up to date on all things RuneScape related, then hit that subscribe button. Next thing we're going to check out to close out the video is the patch notes and see what's been changed with today's update. So let's go ahead and check it out. Starting off, we got some game jam updates. Misty in the Deep Sea Fishing Hub now has 2 shiny new chat options. She will tell you how long it has been since the current encounter started. No more guessing how fresh the traveling merchant is. If no event currently is present, she will instead tell you how long it's been since there was an encounter, and she will pass on rumors of what stock the traveling merchant has that day. When purchasing the items in slot 2, 3, and 4 of the traveling merchant, it would erroneously show locked instead of sold out to show the items were out of stock. This has now been correct. And lastly, when the game servers reboot as part of weekly updates, there was a minimum of 45 minutes before the first encounter in deep sea fishing, such as the traveling merchant, could appear. This is no longer the case, and such encounters can now potentially, depending on RNG, appear immediately after a game server reboot. Next up, we got some changes to Zamorak and Vorkath. Lord of the Bones now reduces armor at a 0.2% per stack, maxing at 40%. Vorkath's Ice Crystal attack no longer damages Dreadnips or Sarin Spell Prisms. Vorkath's Breath attack has been updated to provide better visual feedback. Hard mode achievements have been added to the Zamorak and Vorkath battle. Insane Final Boss achievement now correctly shows and track hard mode, as well as pet requirements. Some items obtained from Battle of 403 reward chests are now noted. Zemregal's summons spawn location changed to avoid spawning under Vorkath. Players now only take damage if they stop in a poison pool. However, if a poison pool spawns on them, they can mitigate damage by running to an empty square when the pool appears. If crossing a single pool, they will only take damage once a player stops in it. Added the Vorkath Necromancy weapon overrides to the Zemregal and Vorkath encounter drop table. Moving on, we got some changes to the Christmas Village. Iron Man can now purchase double wrapping paper from the marketplace, updated the bank chest in the Christmas Village to better fit the environment, updated the trees as well, and fixed the texture on the snow pile to craft snowballs. Smokey the Coal now moves more slowly and is easier to interact with. Some missing windows have been rebuilt in Falador and Lumbridge, removed some unnecessary options on the advent calendar icon on mobile, fixed several graphical issues with Christmas lights in Falador and Lumbridge. Vorkath will now appropriately award wrapping paper. Some Christmas lights in Fort Fernley will no longer float when Remove Roof is enabled. Stolen decorations from the Southern Varrock have been returned by the imps. Fix some duplicate text within the combined text on the Christmas scarves and hats. The Varrock Eastern Gate can now be passed through correctly. Players will now have their transmog removed when speaking to various NPCs around the Christmas Village. Free-to-play players will be able to purchase the winter hat and scarf from the Christmas Spirit store. The ice fishing waterhole has been slightly adjusted so it no longer has a darker square shadow within it. Clicking on a button to open a different interface in the Treasure Hunter progress bar will now reopen Treasure Hunter when closing the interface. Some various typos and inconsistencies have been fixed across the Christmas event. A Christmas tree in the Grand Exchange now has a fence around the trunk. The advent calendar now mentions the prize received when opening a window. Some lampposts in Varrock have had their string lights appropriately attached. Mince pies now can be noted and traded. The text for the advent and event buttons within Treasure Hunter have been made brighter. Snowballs made within Christmas Village should now give the up-to-date reclaim information upon attempting to destroy them. And lastly, Fort Fernley's chapel decorations have been returned by the Snow Imps. To see the changes, re-enable the Christmas decorations via Zoe. Moving on to some general changes, the But It Won't Warp You Anywhere achievement can now be completed again. Fixed an issue that made certain items equip while using fill or empty options within the bank interface. The Samurai Outfit override should now appear in correct categories. The King and Queen of Hearts pack and King and Queen of Spades pack weapon overrides should now appear in correct categories. Fixed an issue where players could be disconnected when attempting to empty the giant pouch. Fixed an issue where selecting the lost items button in the bug report interface would open an incorrect web page. Items in ore boxes can now be saved on death unless in a PvP death. The ladder inside the Blue Moon Inn functions once again, and the in-game clock should now refresh as expected. Final thing we will touch on is some engine changes. Fixed an issue where necromancy conjurers were failing to find the right routes during combat, causing them to get stuck. Fixed an issue where setting a high frame rate limit would result in dramatically lower performance on some machines running recent versions of Windows 10 and 11. Fixed an issue where forcing anisotropic filtering via the NVIDIA control panel would result in the game's interface rendering incorrectly. Fixed flickering artifacts of point light shadows on some less common hardware. Fixed interaction between interface scaling and field of view. Fixed an issue where the game failed to launch via Steam for some users with Intel GPUs. Fixed an issue where the game could crash when minimizing the game window on AMD GPUs. Fixed various Android crashes. Improved the quality of game render scaling, as well as interface scaling on desktop and FXAA on mobile and on desktop when the game render scale is not 100%. Improved performance and game rendering quality when interface scale is set to less than 100. Improved performance and quality when game view is resized using edit layouts. Reset game render scale settings to account for Windows/Mac OS DPI scaling due to performance issues. Players wanting native 4K can manually change the settings back to 100. And finally, players using 4K resolutions may observe UI and game rendering being upscaled to 4K at high quality, costing some FPS depending on your system display scaling settings. And that is it for your patch notes. Links to everything discussed in this video will be down in the description below. If you missed last week's video, it will be on screen now. And with that, I will see you with the next news coverage video. I'm out. Aloha.